I'll be presenting our presentation for you today, and Neha will be supporting with any questions and also supporting in the chat. So if you have any questions for us that you'd like us to answer, please feel free to drop those in there, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. My screen is, for whatever reason, not in presentation mode. I might need to switch. Hold on one second, and let me try one more time. All right. Can you guys see everything okay? Wonderful. All right, we'd like to begin today by sharing a land acknowledgement. So Queen's University is situated on the territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, who have traditionally lived and worked on this land and continue to live and work on this land. And we are grateful to be invited as guests and to join them in living and working on this land. And it's my goal to learn more about those people and their communities and their values, so that I can honor their work and honor the land through the work that we do. All right, our plan for today is we'd like to provide an introduction to who QSAS is and what we do. We're also going to share some information about how to register with our office if you're a student with a disability. We'll share what the documentation requirements are, when to register and how to register. And then once you register, what to expect in terms of setting up accommodations. Our office, again, is responsible for working with students with disabilities. We support and empower students who have disability-related barriers in their academics to access and fully participate in their educational experience. So we do this by providing academic accommodations to students based on their first-person experience of their disability, as well as supporting documentation that they provide. So again, my name is Katie Trathan. I'm an assistant manager at Queen's Student Accessibility Services, or QSAS, and I'm here with my colleague Neha, who is an intake coordinator in our office. And so we'd like to share with you a little bit about where to find us. We are located in Mitchell Hall, which is right in the middle of campus on Union Street. Our offices are on the first floor, which you can see in this picture on the right. And we are across from Student Wellness Services in the building. So Student Wellness Services is the office on campus where there are doctors and nurses and counselors who can serve you in that capacity. So feel free to come into our office in person anytime, or call or email, and we can support you in whatever way is most helpful to you. We want to start by sharing about the definition of disability in Canada, knowing that you are international students and that the way that disability is defined may be different depending on what country or culture individuals are coming from. In Canada, and particularly in Ontario, disability is considered a protected ground, which means that in Canada, students can't be treated unfairly or differently because of their disability, and they have certain legal protections. And there are certain disability categories that we acknowledge. So the list is here: acquired brain injury, ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorders, chronic illness or different medical conditions, so that those include a variety of different diagnoses, deafened or hard of hearing individuals, learning disabilities, which might include learning disabilities in math and or reading and writing, low vision or blindness, mental health, which again covers quite a number of different mental health diagnoses, different mobility or functional diagnoses, which cover quite a number of disabilities as well. And then we also want to acknowledge that this might be different in Canada than in other countries, that injuries are included under a disability category and are something that our office can support you with if there are academics that are impacted by your injury. So if you get injured during your time at Queen's, for instance, maybe, hopefully not, but if you were to break your wrist and that were impacting your ability to take notes in class or to write an exam, our office would be able to support you in determining accommodations. We'd like to introduce you to some of our team members and just let you know how they can support you. So this is Nikki. She's our office operations administrator, and she's the first point of contact for students in our office. She will most likely answer your phone call or be sitting at the front desk if you walk in and have any questions. She also supports our intake coordinators in answering emails. She supports appointment scheduling and any documentation that students might need support with coming from our office. Pictured here is one of our intake coordinators, Hannah, and then Neha, who is here on the call as well, is also an intake coordinator. Hannah and Neha review students' documentation that they provide from their medical provider. They answer general questions, and you can set up a short virtual meeting with Hannah or Neha to ask general questions about registration or about accommodation, and they can guide you through the registration process. Once a student becomes registered with our office, they'll be assigned to an accessibility advisor, and they will meet with you to put your accommodations in place. So pictured here are the majority of our accessibility advisors. They are assigned based on faculty. So let's say if a student is in the engineering program, they will meet with a particular advisor who is familiar with the engineering program, who would understand what the requirements were of that program and would be able to work with you to understand how your disability is impacting your ability to participate fully in your program. So again, they would meet with you after reviewing your medical documentation. They would understand your lived experience with your disability, and together they would co-create an accommodation plan with you. And after that meeting, they would input academic accommodations, and they can provide ongoing support with you as well if there are any questions or concerns that come up with those accommodations throughout your time at Queen's. The folks pictured here, and one of them are our management team. So at the top, we have Alan, who's our manager, and then Mary and I are assistant managers. We support our team to make sure they have everything they need to support you. We make sure that we're following legal and university policies and procedures. We want to hear student feedback to make sure we're improving our services and meeting student needs. And we also support instructors to make sure they understand how to apply student accommodations. So again, we're here to support your academic accessibility needs if you have them, or if you do have them over the course of your time at Queen's. So we'll review your information, an intake form and disability documentation. We would have a meeting with you. We would support you in the implementation of the accommodation plan and provide ongoing support as needed. There are a lot of services that students might require, both students with disabilities and students without, that students might require during their time at Queen's. And so if you're meeting with us and you share some of those needs, a big part of the work that we do is referring students to other services. So our team, I showed you earlier, we have accessibility advisors, and that's a different job than academic advising. There's a team of academic advisors that works with each faculty program. And if you need help with course selection or program requirements, an academic advisor is going to be your main contact for those questions. Academic Considerations is, again, a different office from us, and they are there to support students who have unexpected, short-term extenuating circumstances that arise. So, for example, if someone had a death in their family, or if you had the flu, something that was impacting you that was not disability related, that you needed some compassionate consideration for, their office would be available to support you with that short-term need. We do not provide residence accommodation, so our office is specific for academic accommodations only. So if a student were to require residence accommodations, we can support you in reaching the correct person in the residence office. I also mentioned there's a counseling program that's also in our same building through Student Wellness Services. So if you require short-term or ongoing counseling support, that team is there to support you. You're going to hear later this morning from SAFA at SAS, which is Student Academic Success Services. They support students with study skills and learning strategies, and we make referrals to SAS quite often to support students. That's available for free for students with or without disabilities. We provide referrals to adaptive technology services if that's required to support someone's accommodations. And then the exams office can support students who might require religious accommodations or accommodations related to English as a second language. So if a student had a religious observance on the day that they were scheduled for an exam, the exams office can support them with making adjustments to their schedule. So you could contact the exams office directly. For full-time students who speak English as a second language, unfortunately, the exams office does not provide accommodations. But for exchange students whose first language is not English, they may apply through the exams office for limited exams accommodations, including things such as additional writing time or use of a translation dictionary. But again, the exams office would be the main contact for those questions. All right, so if you are a student who has a disability, or again, if you get a diagnosis or end up becoming injured at any point while you're at Queens, you would register with our office, and here's how you would do that. First, we want to make sure that students know that they should register as soon as possible because the process can take several weeks. So ideally, you should start registering with our office tomorrow if that's something that you need to do. Because we'd like for students to start the academic term with an accommodation plan in place. So if a student were to wait until the first day of school in September to reach out to us, they might not have accommodations in place for their midterms or for their final exams. And so if accommodations are required, please register with our office right away so that we can make sure that your accommodations are in place for the beginning of term. Once students receive their Queens ID and password, they have their email address, they're able to log into the program that we use, which is called Ventus. They would use that same Queens email address and password to log into our program through the single sign-on. And Neha can drop the link in the chat there for the student portal for Ventus. Thank you, Neha. The first step when logging into Ventus would be, well, here's what it would look like. This is just a sample, but you would enter here, and this gets you started with registering with our office. The first step, once you're in Ventus, is to complete the intake form. The intake form asks you general questions about previous accommodations you may have had in high school or in a previous academic setting, as well as about your functional limitations. So essentially, how is your disability impacting you in your academics? And this will help your accessibility advisor get to know you and understand what accommodations might be supportive for you. The next step would be to submit medical documentation. So you would submit that through the Ventus portal, which is a secure way of submitting confidential documentation. After completing that form, you'll be prompted to upload the documentation here. And we have information on our website that we won't go through in detail today about what our documentation criteria is. I'm just going to share some quick notes about our documentation criteria, but then, of course, depending on your diagnosis, you can look up the specifics on our website. When our intake coordinators are looking at your documentation, they're first of all looking to confirm that you have a disability or disabilities. So again, our office only supports students with disabilities based on the Canadian definition of that. And if you are in the process of getting diagnosed, please upload the documentation that you have. We'd be interested to know that as well, and may be able to provide accommodations for you in the meantime while you're working with your provider on the diagnosis. The second thing our intake team is looking for in your documentation is that it contains information about your functional impacts within the academic environment. So that means, how is your reading or writing or note taking or test taking impacted by your disability? And that information will help us to know what kinds of accommodations you might need based on what your provider shares. Lastly, our intake coordinators are looking to understand the duration and severity of your disability or impairment. So is this something that your provider expects will clear up in a few weeks? Is this something that's permanent that you'll require accommodations for the entire time that you're at university? Again, if you have documentation, but it doesn't meet all three of these criteria, we would encourage you to upload it anyway. Have our intake coordinators review it. They'll let you know what additional information they need. And again, in the meantime, the information that you provide may have enough information that we can get you interim accommodations. That means accommodations for a period of time to allow you time to get additional documentation. Some notes that are important is that the documentation must be submitted in English. So if your documentation was completed in a language other than English, we would just ask that you have it be translated so that our office is able to review it in English. Documentation from outside of Canada is accepted. So please, again, we're just looking at it against our documentation criteria. And we would encourage you, if you're coming to Canada from your home country, to bring along hard copies or digital copies of any documentation that you have about your disability, whether it be medical reports, psychoeducational or neuropsych assessments, letters from your doctor, anything like that. A plan that you might have had in place at your high school. We're happy to look at any documentation that you have. And again, we'll let you know if there's additional information that's needed. If you don't have any documentation, we do have our own Queen's verification form, which is the QR code that's on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. There are different versions of the form based on what category of disability you'll be applying under. We also accept psychoeducational or neuropsych evaluation, psychoeducational assessments or neuropsychological evaluations if you've had one done. If you don't know what that is, feel free to ask our intake coordinators when you meet with them, and we encourage you to submit it. On the top right, you can probably ignore where it says OSAP Disability Verification Form. That's specific to students who are from Ontario who are applying for financial assistance in Ontario. And so, yeah, feel free to scan the QR code on the bottom left, which will provide more information about a form that you can give to your provider to have them fill it out. And that will help guarantee that it includes all of the information that we're looking for. Once our intake coordinators have reviewed the documentation and we determine that it meets our criteria, you would receive an invitation to attend an intake appointment with your accessibility advisor. And the appointment will be scheduled for you and you would receive an email with that date. If you are going to be registering with us before the term starts, which again is preferable, we would encourage you to keep an eye on your Queen's email. That's where our intake coordinators will be communicating with you about whether or not they need additional information or if you've been scheduled for your intake appointment and when that will be. The final step of registration is to meet with your advisor to co-create your accommodation plan. So you're not considered fully registered with us and your accommodations aren't in place until that final step of having that meeting with your advisor to input your plan. So at that meeting, when you're setting up your accommodations, what can you expect? Well, first of all, we want to let you know about confidentiality. So we maintain strict confidentiality standards to make sure that your personal and academic information, your medical information that you share with us is maintained private. And we follow Ontario and Canadian privacy laws, as well as university policies about privacy. So if you are a student who has accommodations with our office, the instructors and professors would know that you had accommodations, but they wouldn't know what the accommodations are for or what your diagnosis is. So they would need to know, for example, that you are allowed extensions on assignments because they need to know that information to allow you that accommodation. But they wouldn't know, they wouldn't be able to see any of your paperwork or what your diagnosis is or any of the information that we discuss in your confidential meeting. Additionally, once a student is an adult, which is 18 in Canada, we require student consent to share any information with a parent or guardian. So if you would like a parent or guardian or any other supporter to attend a meeting with you, you're welcome to do so. But in our office and in any of the offices at Queen's, if you'd like us to communicate with a third party, we would just provide you with a release form so that you can let us know that you'd like to provide that consent. When you met with the accommodation or with the accessibility advisor, the meetings probably be more about 45 minutes long. You could meet remotely. So if you are currently not in Kingston, you can still set up that meeting with our office for a virtual meeting. There's virtually no preparation needed. Your advisor will ask all the questions that they need to know, and we'll just ask about you and your experience with how your disability impacts your academics. They will recommend accommodations and help you understand how they work and how to access them. And as I mentioned earlier, we like to refer students to other helpful campus resources. We are here to answer any questions that you have. So we're available for a bit today to answer questions. And we also are providing our email address here. This goes directly to Neha, her partner, Hannah, and our office operations admin, Nikki. The three of them will do their best to answer your questions as soon as possible. And I also want to remind you that you can set up a virtual appointment with them if you prefer to have a conversation versus discuss via email. And then lastly, here are some resources for some ways to get connected prior to starting at Queens in September. On the left are some links about first year foundations. These are some programs that the university is putting on to support new students. And then on the right are some QR codes that link to QSAS's pages. So our homepage, information about academic accommodations, and then lastly, information about our documentation requirements. I know I shared a lot of details with you today, but this is not your last chance to ask questions about those. Again, Neha and I are here to answer any questions that you have. So at this time, I'd love to open it up to anyone if you'd like to, raise your virtual hand or drop a question in the chat. We're happy to answer any questions that we can.